My name is Stephen Fleming, and today we have another video from the Course in Miracles, Chapter 2, the Separation and the Atonement, Part 5, the Function of the Miracle Worker. Chapter 2, Part 5, the Function of the Miracle Worker. So, let's begin. Before miracle workers are ready to undertake their function in this world, it is essential that they fully understand the fear of release. Otherwise, they may unwittingly foster the belief that release is imprisonment, a belief that is already very prevalent. This misperception arises in turn from the belief that harm can be limited to the body. That is because of the underlying fear that the mind can hurt itself. None of these errors is meaningful because the miscreations of the mind do not really exist. This recognition is a far better protective device than any form of level confusion because it introduces corrections at the level of the error. It is essential to remember that only the mind can create, and that correction belongs at the thought level. To amplify an earlier statement, spirit is already perfect, and therefore does not require correction. The body does not exist except as a learning device for the mind. This learning device is not subject to errors of its own because it cannot create. It is obvious then that inducing the mind to give up its miscreations is the only application of creative ability that is truly meaningful. Okay. So let's interpret that. Okay. So the fear of release from fear, that's basically what it's saying. The fear that the mind has of release from fear can be interpreted as a fear of imprisonment, specifically a fear of integration. The mind fears joining with other minds, of self-awareness and joining with other minds, a fear that it will lose itself potentially in giving up what it perceives as freedom, which is nothing more than illusion. It perceives this illusion, however, as freedom to do what it will, a freedom to dream, a freedom to have thoughts that have no impact at all on reality. These are things that a confused or distorted mind believes is freedom. In actuality, this is imprisonment. So these fears can also be interpreted as a fear of change. Ultimately, what is going on here? Ultimately, this fear is a fear of awakening. The mind feels comfortable in a dreamlike state. The mind feels more comfortable in illusions. The illusions are familiar. The illusions are something that, they may not be perfect, they may be fearful, but at the same time, the mind still knows what it's dealing with. The mind is still completely familiar with the illusion type environment, and any change in that is fearful because there is a fear of change. Ultimately, fear of awakening is basically what we're talking about. Fear of release is the same as fear of awakening, fear of waking up. So, the mind is invested in illusions, and therefore the mind remains asleep. So that's enough about that paragraph. Let's keep on going because we have 9 more. So, next paragraph. Magic is the mindless or the miscreative use of mind. Physical medications are forms of spells, but if you are afraid to use the mind to heal, you should not attempt to do so. The very fact that you are afraid makes your mind vulnerable to miscreation. You are therefore likely to misunderstand any healing that might occur. And because egocentricity and fear usually occur together, you may be unable to accept the real source of the healing. Under these conditions, it is safer for you to rely temporarily on physical healing devices, because you cannot misperceive them as your own creations. As long as your sense of vulnerability persists, you should not attempt to perform miracles. So, simple interpretation. While you are afraid, use medicine. Don't use the mind to heal. The mind is vulnerable. The mind is already misperceiving. And so while you are afraid, just use that blood pressure medicine. Use that medicine for your high cholesterol or whatever it is. For me, it's eye drops for being diagnosed with glaucoma. So while you are afraid, while you are invested in illusions, go ahead and continue to use healing remedies or healing agents that the mind has given healing belief to. Basically is what it is. It's very weak, but at the same time, the mind has still given healing belief to it. The mind is still powerful. And even in a world of illusions, the mind can still impact things with tremendous force. So if healing belief is given to anything, okay, it will have a chance of success on the body. But that is no different. What A Course in Miracles is saying is that is no different than a belief in magic. So let's keep going. Got a lot more paragraphs to go. I have already said that miracles are expressions of miracle-mindedness. And miracle-mindedness means right-mindedness. The right-minded neither exalt nor depreciate the mind of the miracle worker or the miracle receiver. However, as a correction, the miracle need not await the right-mindedness of the receiver. In fact, its purpose is to restore him to his right mind. It is essential, however, that the miracle worker be in his right mind, however briefly, as he will be unable to reestablish right-mindedness in someone else. All right. Okay, interpretation. Very simple and practical interpretation. In order to heal someone else, in order to heal someone, a person must first be healed. In order to instill right-mindedness, a person must be in their right mind. One cannot give what one does not have to give. So if one is not in their right mind, then they cannot impart right-mindedness to another. You can only give what you have. You can only give what you are, and having and being are the same. So if you are in your right mind and you have right-mindedness, then you have the prerequisite for healing another mind. Let's continue. The healer who relies on his own readiness is endangering his understanding. You are perfectly safe as long as you are completely unconcerned about your readiness. but maintain a consistent trust in mine. If your miracle working inclinations are not functioning properly, it is always because fear has intruded on your right-mindedness and has turned it upside down. All forms of not right-mindedness are the result of refusal to accept the Atonement for yourself. If you do accept it, you are in a position to recognize that those who need healing are simply those who have not realized that right-mindedness is healing. So, let's interpret this. Interpretation. It is not about illness or illusion, for that is merely the effect. Illness and illusion is the effect. It is about causality, and the cause of all illness belongs with the mind. The mind is causality. The mind is cause. Therefore, to heal the mind is to heal everything else. Heal the mind, and everything else follows, including the body. Now, in order to correct right-mindedness, the healer must be in their right mind. And right-mindedness is healing. Let's keep going. Next paragraph. The sole responsibility of the miracle worker is to accept the Atonement for himself or herself. This means you recognize that mind is the only creative level and that its errors are healed by the Atonement. Once you accept this, your mind can only heal. By denying your mind any destructive potential and reinstating its purely constructive powers, you place yourself in a position to undo the level confusion of others. So I'm going to repeat that. This is very important. By denying your mind any destructive potential and reinstating its purely constructive powers, you place yourself in a position to undo the level confusion of other minds. Of others, in Course in Miracles, I added other minds. The message you then give to them is the truth that their minds are similarly constructive and their miscreations cannot hurt them. By affirming this, you release the mind from over-evaluating its own learning device and restore the mind to its true position as the learner. Okay. Creativity exists solely in the mind, not the spirit, not the body. When one understands this, they are in the position then with this understanding to impact right-mindedness in other minds. All minds are joined. Understanding of truth by one mind impacts another. I'm going to repeat the last sentence. By affirming this, you release the mind from over-evaluating its own learning device and restore the mind to its true position as the learner. Okay. Now, by affirming this, you release the mind from over-evaluating its own learning device, aka the body. The body. And restore the mind restore the mind to its true position as the learner. All right. So let's continue. Let's keep going. We're doing good. It should be emphasized again that the body does not learn any more than it creates. As a learning device, it merely follows the learner. But if it is falsely endowed with self-initiative, it becomes a serious obstruction to the very learning it should facilitate. Only the mind is capable of illumination. Spirit is already illuminated. The body is too dense. The mind, however, can bring its illumination to the body by recognizing that it is not the learner and is therefore unamenable to learning. The body is, however, easily brought into alignment with a mind that has learned to look beyond it towards the light. All right. So let's talk about this. The body is a learning device. The body is merely used to help facilitate the mind while it is in this dreamlike state of illusions called life. The body has no more use other than to just facilitate learning. The mind will learn from physical symptoms and illnesses and things that are generated by the body. The body will allow the mind to be able to interact in this reality, in this dreamlike world. The body is the vehicle that the mind utilizes to interact with other minds that are using the same body, that are using, their own learning devices or bodies. Now, any belief that the mind has in the body's ability to create or initiate or be self-initiating will manifest physical illness. That will manifest physical illness. That will be the learning that the mind will receive. The body will then manifest illnesses and physical symptoms and things of that nature. The body cannot create. The body is not capable of thought. The mind, however, is very powerful, and the mind can falsely endow the body, or can attempt to endow the body with false self-initiative. It's not going to happen, but at the same time, what's going to really end up manifesting or taking place is physical illness, physical symptoms, things of that nature, and that's about it. So now, all of this can be undone, as far as all of the physical symptoms and illnesses can all be undone if the mind merely looks at the body from the right perspective, or looks at it for what it is, and which is merely a learning device. It is not capable of creative thought. It is not capable of illumination. Okay, only the mind and spirit are illuminated. So if all the mind needs to do is simply see the body for what it is, that's all it needs to do to basically bring illumination from itself to the body by seeing the body exactly for what it is. And that will then bring the body into alignment, which is what Course in Miracles is actually saying. So let's move on. Corrective learning always begins with the awakening of spirit and the turning away from the belief in physical sight. This often entails fear because you are afraid of what your spiritual sight will show you. I said before that the Holy Spirit cannot see error and is capable only of looking beyond it to the defense of at-one-ment. There is no doubt that this may produce discomfort, yet the discomfort is not the final outcome of the perception. When the Holy Spirit is permitted to look upon the defilement of the altar, he also looks immediately towards the at-one-ment. Nothing he perceives can induce fear. Everything that results from spiritual awareness is merely channeled towards correction. Discomfort is aroused only to bring the need for correction into awareness. So, the Holy Spirit, God's teacher, the voice for God, will use everything in your existence, everything in your life to help facilitate learning and error and the correction of errors. What you will experience during these times where the Holy Spirit is basically moving through your life in an attempt to get you to look at certain things that need to be healed, what you will experience during this time is discomfort. So I want you to think back in times where maybe in your life that it seemed that you were not comfortable. I want you to think back in your life when you were going through some turmoil, you were going through a storm, a dark night of the soul, and things like that. So I want you to look back at moments in your life when you were going through something. I want you to look back in moments in your life where you were possibly going through a dark night of the soul, where you were possibly going through a storm, where you were possibly going through turmoil, where it seemed as if you weren't able to take things any longer, where you were stressed and strained and going through what seemed to be insurmountable odds. And then I want you to think about when you actually came out on the other end of that. Okay. In many of these instances, Holy Spirit is involved. In many of these instances, as a matter of fact, not even in many of these instances, in all of these instances, it's still up to the mind to actually learn these lessons that God's teacher is bringing to us, is ushering to us. It's still up to the mind to be willing to look at certain things that need to be corrected. It's still up to the mind to have the courage to look within and see what is causing whatever the mind is experiencing, whatever turmoil, whatever storm, whatever dark night of the soul that the mind is going through, that the person is going through. There is a cause, and that cause has nothing to do with anything that is outside of that person or that mind. That cause has everything to do with the thought processes that are going on with the mind, with the way that the mind is perceiving themselves, with the way that the mind is perceiving others, with the way that the mind is perceiving themselves as being separate from their brother, the way that the mind is perceiving themselves as being unworthy and not worth having abundant things, and so the mind becomes frustrated, the person becomes frustrated and things like that. So all of these things are learning opportunities for the mind. All of these things are lessons from God's teacher, Holy Spirit. So in summary, Holy Spirit will use everything in your life, and use it towards the correction of erroneous thoughts. So let's go on to the next paragraph. The fear of healing arises in the end from an unwillingness to accept unequivocally that healing is necessary. What the physical eye sees is not corrective, nor can error be corrected by any device that can be seen physically. As long as you believe in what your physical eye or what your physical sight tells you, your attempts at correction will be misdirected. The real vision is obscured because you cannot endure to see your own defiled altar. But since the altar has been defiled, your state becomes doubly dangerous unless it is perceived. So, let's expound on that. So, the fear of healing can also be interpreted as a fear of change. This is also a fear of looking at whatever mess has been created by a miscreating mind. This is an act of denial, pure and simple, which must be observed if it is to be healed. Whatever is going on within, whatever is going on within the altar, whatever is going on within the mind must be looked at. The mind must be courageous enough to look at and observe what is there so that way it can be healed. And through healing, or through observing and perception, and where the mind can actually see whatever it is that needs to be healed, that is the beginning of healing. Once you are willing to see and look at and understand that you are the cause of all of your ills and slights in this world. Whatever's going on in this world that has you up in arms, whatever's going on in this world that has you upset, whatever's going on in this world that has you feeling down or depressed, or feeling as if you didn't quite miss the mark, or maybe you feel as if your life didn't turn out the way you wanted it to turn out, or you had always wanted to be this, or had always wanted to be that, and things just didn't. This all starts within. And there is something that needs to be corrected within. And when the mind is willing to look within, then the mind can actually change its existence. It can change its reality. But in order to heal, you have to be able to look at what needs to be healed. Alcoholics Anonymous and other addiction type programs, in order to change, they all attest to the fact that in order to change, one has to be willing to look at whatever it needs to be healed. In order to heal it, you have to look at it. And if you can't look at it, then that is just another form of denial. Now, when you are denying this, when you deny things, you actually manifest at that point a shadow. And that shadow will then go ahead and act out these manifestations of whatever defilement is in the altar, whatever miscreations are in the mind. It's still going to find its way out. You're not going to be able to think this way and just keep it hidden from the world. No, it's going to come out either through you, or you're going to project it onto others and think that other people are like this, and wonder why this is what you're seeing everywhere you go, why people are being this way, and it's really you who's projecting it onto other people, onto your brothers and sisters, or onto other minds. So, all right. So it's always important to in any type of healing, in any type of therapy, to be able to look at what needs to be healed in order to, as the first step in healing. Okay. Basically what it was trying to say. So paragraph 9. Healing is an ability that developed after the separation, before which it was unnecessary. Like all aspects of the belief in space and time, it is temporary. However, as long as time persists, healing is needed as a means of protection. This is because healing rests on charity, and charity is a way of perceiving the perfection of another, even if you cannot perceive it in yourself. Most of the loftiest concepts of which you are capable now are time dependent. Charity is really a weaker reflection of a much more powerful love encompassment that is far beyond any form of charity you can conceive as of yet. Charity is essential to right-mindedness in the limited sense in which it can now be attained. So, I'm going to expound on this. Charity, what it's actually saying is that basically perceiving your brother, the perception in your brother or your sister will lead to healing within yourself. So what that means is, even for those of us who have not been healed, even for those of us who have not accepted the Atonement, even for those of us who are still going through our things, to be able to perceive charity, you can still perceive charity, or you can still give charity by perceiving perfection in another. So even if you don't see that perfection in yourself, you can still perceive it in someone else. And that is a form of charity. And what that will actually do is that will not only help that person, give that person a boost, so to speak, but it will also give you a boost as well. So it's a kind of a free way to boost you up, to boost up your right-mindedness, to move you towards the light, to move you towards right-mindedness, and towards perceiving things correctly and true perception. Just giving some charity, just a little charity. You see somebody going through their things, you just perceive the light in them, perceive the perfection in them. You know, it's okay. Even if you can't perceive the perfection in yourself, perceive the perfection in them. I see you perfect. I see Bob as perfect. You know, I know Bob came to work and was fussing and complaining and things like that, just kicked over his trash can. But you know something? That's not who Bob is. That's not who Bob is at all. And I perceive maybe Bob just woke up on the wrong side of the bed. Maybe Bob had a disagreement with his spouse. But I know that's not Bob. The Bob that I know, the Bob that I know is a Bob who everybody can get behind. The Bob that I know is a perfect Bob. The Bob that I know is perfect. He is a child of God. And so just because he's going through a temporary thing, it doesn't change who Bob is. Bob is a child of God. And so am I. So let's keep going. All right. Paragraph 10. Charity is a way of looking at another as if he had already gone far beyond his actual accomplishments in time. Since his own thinking is faulty, he cannot see the Atonement for himself, or he would have no need of charity. The charity that is accorded him is both an acknowledgement that he needs help and a recognition that he will accept it. Both of these perceptions clearly imply their dependence on time, making it apparent that charity still lies within the limitations of this world. I said before that only revelation transcends time. The miracle as an expression of charity can only shorten it. It must be understood, however, that whenever you offer a miracle to another, you are shortening the suffering of both of you. This corrects retroactively as well as progressively. So, charity is a way of looking on another as if they had already gone far beyond actual accomplishments in time. So again, seeing the perfection, seeing that is not who they are, that is how you give charity to someone else. And that's pretty easy. That's pretty simple. However, it also expounds on this paragraph, saying that a miracle is a form of charity as well. Miracles, however, require right-mindedness, and they're more direct, and they actually shorten the amount of learning that is needed by the receiver and as well as the giver. And both the giver and the receiver move forward in time. And this has already been discussed on previous videos when we talk about miracles, so I'm not going to talk about that here. I'm just basically going to say that miracles are another form of charity. But just merely perceiving someone else in the light, just merely perceiving someone else being all they can be, just merely perceiving the perfection, to using your imagination, your perception to see past what it is that your physical eyes, remember your physical eyes won't tell you anything about anything, but using your imagination and your perception to look past what your physical eyes tell you and then see a new reality for that person that you are giving that charity to. See a new reality as far as this person being happy, this perfect person being loving, this person being a light to others. Okay, just seeing these things can help this person in their growth, in their advancement, in their moving towards what you in fact are trying to move towards yourself. And you will not only help them, but you will help yourself as well. So it is a boost to them as well as a boost to you. So this is the end of the function of the miracle worker. Next week we have special principles of miracle workers. So we're going to go into that a little bit more about the principles, special principles of miracle workers. So we'll have chapter 2, but we will discuss special principles of miracle workers. So I want to thank you all for joining me this evening. And again, my name is Stephen Fleming. I want to wish you all a wonderful, wonderful evening. See you next week.